All right, here we are in a new location. We're doing a little jacuzzi pad. Here's what we got. I've removed the form so I can drive my tractor to get the concrete in here. I'll put that up when we get near here, put that form back up. Here's the electrical. The jacuzzi will sit right on this edge, somewhere on this side of the pad. There's your entrance. That conduit runs right over here, comes up into here, a 50 amp. Then that's how I'm gonna move it with that little beast right there. Here's the jacuzzi here. That's gonna be getting placed over there. Concrete has arrived. All right, David Odell with Odell Complete Concrete on this DIY special. Basically, I'm just going to do this decorative concrete with some leftover materials that I had as far as the staining or the release agent goes. This is a 2500 PSI 3/4 inch rock. This is a modified bucket I made just for this purpose, just for hauling concrete or lightweight materials in general. Although concrete's not light, but you don't want to use an oversized bucket. That's really not designed for the front end of this tractor. All your fittings are going to get, I mean, if you were dragging it a lot, using it for demo and stuff, you'd do some serious damage to the arms. So you want to minimize your use, what you're going to use it for, in other words. This bucket's about 3 times bigger than the biggest one they make for that tractor. This is a 2x8 right here, so we're deep. We're 8 inches on that edge and we're 7 on the sides. So I've got a double stacked 2x4 there. What we did was we put all the concrete in the hole to start with. We thought we were close until we started screeding. And then we realized we had way too much in there. See all the excess we're pulling back, and look how stiff that is. That's about a 4.5 inch slump. Since we had too much concrete, I brought the tractor back into position and just scraped it into the bucket, and then I'll have to dispose of it. But I have 1 inch slope on here, and I think I did a little research on the jacuzzis. You could probably, they have about a 2 inch max tolerance on those. So I'm only 1 inch, so I'm gonna be fine. This jacuzzi's 8 foot wide. This slab's 10 feet. So we're gonna have some space, a little space all the way around it. Just enough to get around it, walk around it. We used the roller tamper there to knock some of the rock down. Then the 4-foot bull float, both directions. Doug said that because he was out here, I guess, when she was backing in, and I don't know how she did it, but she hit the post. I don't know what happened here, but you can see how wide this gate is. You can see the tire tracks here, about 3 feet over from that post. Then the other tire over here, about 5 feet over. But for some reason, there's one tire track right here. And it kept, I don't know how, but it caught this. Look at the bolt. Now it bent it all the way back, and the post, look at this, pulled this post back about 3 inches, bent that, almost snapped that hanger off. Now the gap got really big here. It was kind of tight. Now it's like I could almost walk through it if I lost about 50 pounds. But wow, it's hard to believe though. Anyway, I'm gonna get back to this concrete. I'm gonna have to dig around that whole footing, put come-alongs in between to kind of pull it over, tighten the fabric up, and then put some concrete around that, stiffen it back up. Oh, it could have been worse. I guess you could have ran into my solar panels, but it was just a post this time. Here's a 1/2-inch radius walking edger, making the edges easy to lay down. Plastic's coming off quick. They're not worried about splattering concrete at this point. We are going to use a release agent, antique color release agent, and that doesn't stick to the building very easily, so you can wash that off the next day. There's the funny trowel going on. Now I'm measuring out the layout for the joints, and we have this pad's 16 feet by 10 feet, and then you have the walkway. I used 3.5 yards on this though, because it's pretty deep. Otherwise it would have been like, what, 2.25 if I was 4 inches deep. But you know what I found is that deeper concrete is better than thin concrete that has base. Too. I like them both. Now, as I was Fresnoing it, and that's the beauty of using a Fresno because it's wide, it's 3 foot or 4 foot, whatever, but it's a good straight edge. And that'll show you where your low points are. If you watch your Fresno gliding over it, you can see where it's not touching, and then you know you got a low point. And so that's what I was able to do, fill it in before, you know, it started puddling there. Yeah, the jacuzzi will sit right over here on this end of it. It'll be tucked in between the oleanders and the rosewood tree there. Rosewood's looking a little sparse right now on the leaves. That's typical for this time of year, but it fills up solid. Probably within a couple months, you won't even be able to see through it. Now I'm pulling some stakes on that face because I'm going to have to trowel it out because I have about an 8-inch step down right there. I have to face it and then I have to stamp it. But because I oiled all these forms up with some Mobile Ones used synthetic oil diluted with diesel, the forms come off really nicely. And it doesn't take any concrete off with the form. Real clean. So what that does is I eliminate another step. I don't have to use a hand flow on the face. I can go straight to a trowel at this point. Save me 5 or 10 minutes. This concrete doesn't have any steel reinforcement in it, just has the depth of the concrete, and because it's not a very big area, it's going to be perfectly fine. I do have fiber mesh in here though. Just a little bonus. Probably didn't even need that either. Here's your antique release agent going on. This is, you call it an autumn brown. Some leftovers from a previous job. And you know I get leftovers every time because what I do before I do my rinse is I take a horsehair broom, sweep up all the excess, throw it back in the bucket. Now this tool right here is a little rock roller, and it's made by Marshalltown. It's about 1 foot wide. It gives you that simulated stone border. And I got on that early on the edge because it goes pretty deep. And on the inside, the field, we're going to use a roller texture. So both of these tools makes it a lot easier. You can cover more area quicker with less effort because there's no pounding and moving mats. Although Doug did have to use these small touch-up skins along the wall because the roller texture that we're going to be using can only get within about 4 inches of the wall. Now I've got to bring down these lines down the face. Also, I still have to slap facial on that with some and get a little texture going. So I'll cut the joints first on the face, and then I'll slap texture and do it with the hand mats. Now Doug's back on the roller, and it does cut a vein. It does have a vein in that particular skin on that roller, and it's a repeater because that's only about a 9-inch diameter, 8-inch. So you got a repeating vein every so often. And so what I ended up doing to kind of tone that repeater vein off, I ran it both directions. Now you can see the roller didn't get the edge here. So I'm going to run the hand mat all along that just to make sure I got color embossed everywhere. Otherwise you'll end up with some shiners here and there. It won't look pretty on your rinse. Kind of like bald spots, you might say. But here's a really fine broom. I actually use this broom to wash my truck occasionally. It's that fine of a bristle. Now you can reuse this stuff, you know, if it stays clean. If it's windy or you're getting a lot of debris blowing into it, then you have to just dispose of it all. But in this case, it stayed fairly clean, so I recovered, I don't know, I think about 30%, and I just threw it back in the bucket. I've actually had jobs, larger jobs, you know, maybe 2,000 square feet of stamp job, where we ran out of release when we get to the last truckload. So everyone scrambles, goes back to the first 2 loads that we stamped out already and start trying to gather enough release to finish the last load out. That's always fun. But you can kind of start to see how it's going to start the two-tone process after I rinse this secondary color off of here. I went kind of light just with the broom and water to start with to see where I'm at. Now if I want more color off than what I've got going this route, I can go with a pressure washer, or I can go with a muriatic acid diluted. And that's what I ended up doing. I ended up going with the 5-to-1, 5 water, 1 muriatic acid. And then I spray the whole thing with that, broom it again, and do another wash. And I could even remove more depending on how much acid I put in there. And then if I really want to remove a lot more of the secondary color, I go with acid and a pressure washer. It's just really, it's just preference at this point when you're doing your rinse. Right here, I've got to do some cleanup at the bottom because we held the plastic about a 1/2 inch high. That way we could see the chalk line easily. And what else? Oh, yeah, and so the plastic wouldn't get trapped in the concrete. I like to get it off early, the plastic. That way I can get a nice clean edge along the building. So I had to scrape a little concrete, in other words, in that last ½ inch. Fortunately, it's a metal building, so it doesn't stick that well to it. Here's the sprayer for the acid solution. This is the same acid that you would use for your pool to work your pH balance. Find it in the pool section, usually Lowe's, Home Depot, or any hardware. Okay. So when you're doing acid, you always want to add your water first. If you dump this in straight without the water first, the fumes will come back right in your face, and that can do some lung damage and eyes, you know, the whole works. Here's the 9-inch Milwaukee cordless cutoff saw. I'm just going to finish out these joints on the edges and deepen them. That way the water will run out of the joints quickly, and since I'm deepening it at the same time, it guarantees that the concrete will crack in those locations rather than somewhere else randomly. So I spray the acid on each one of these sections and then broom and then rinse. So I go through each section, that way I know where I left off each time at every joint. You can see the acid starting to react a little bit as I spray it, and you know it's working. Now look at all the colors coming off still. Now you could remove a little bit just with a pressure washer, but the acid is where you're really getting aggressive and getting more color off. Yeah, so now I've got a good contrast here, good two-tone effect. Plus I'll do a little bit on the face, make it all uniform. Now here's your sealer going on. This sealer that I'm using, super high in the solids. Matter of fact, you can't get this, you could only get this sealer in Nevada. You can't get it in California or Arizona with this much solids in it because of the VOC stuff. So I diluted it basically. I can dilute this 50-50 with acetone, but I only went, 1 part acetone, 3 parts sealer, so it's still thick coming out of this sprayer. I did 2 coats. This is only 5 days after the pour. Because it's so dry where I'm at in this location, the area, no humidity, super dry and pretty hot. All the water comes out of the concrete quickly, you can seal early. But if you're somewhere else where you have high humidity and things are happening a little bit slower with your curing process, then you're gonna have to wait probably 30 days, maybe more. But in this case, I banged her out in 5 days. I've actually pulled this whole process off in 1 day, believe it or not. That was in Las Vegas, but same region. Anyway, that turned out really nice. Anyway, thanks for watching. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. Hit that notification so you can be notified on the next upload. Concrete.